When we initially started this, I think it was a couple of months ago, and we said I said I'm gonna give a talk about Timișoara, how we did things, how we are about a year and a half into our transformation. A few things changed since then. So I will have a new role, Holger will have a new role, or a new company anyway, same role. Then we talked, or actually I proposed to Holger that maybe we should do this together in a different way. So he agreed. Now, obviously, you have to understand that because of that, we haven't rehearsed this, we haven't seen the slides, so it's going to be us talking about some slides. I think the format is more of a fire chat. We're going to talk about how did we try to do things in Timișoara in a different way, how does he see that, how do I do. As it's not rehearsed, we're going to see how actually that's going to work, but yeah.
Yeah, so the idea was a couple of months ago, we were at Amir Alsby. You guys still remember him, right? InfoSec. We went to his company, and he asked us to talk about transformation and how to transform a company. And Raul started talking about Romania, and we kind of got in the flow where we kind of played ping pong, and I gave him I threw balls to him, and he threw them back, and we kind of liked that format, and that originated the idea of doing the same here. Now, somehow there it felt spontaneous, which probably led us not rehearsing. So this will be also spontaneous. I just don't know if it works the same way.
Nevertheless, let's kind of give it a go.
But one second before you go.
Yeah, this is how it's gonna be.
Yes, this is what always happens, and I promise I'm gonna tone down a little bit. What happened in Romania the last 1.5 years, I think, is a good example of, I think, what will happen here and what is also happening in Barcelona. And this is, I think, why it's so important to look a little bit behind the curtain, what we did there over the last 1.5 years. I don't know, who of you was in Timișoara lately, in the last?
There are like 10 of them here, so.
Well, yes, you're the main protagonist, but when you go there, there is an energy, there is a focus, there is even more than 3 years ago when I was the first time. And I think what happened in Timișoara is also testimonial to what Raul has done there. And I think it's really important for me personally to also talk about what he did there and why we did it. And I will take a step back now, because ultimately and this is true, right? What we did in Timișoara, Raul did. My role was more like kind of keeping his back free and making sure no one kind of goes in on the side and says, what are you doing there? So I gave him the runway, but Bernd and I gave him the runway. And what happened in Timișoara mostly was Raul taking our ideas and putting them into practice.
It was Raul and Marius doing that. We're going to come back to that later on, because it was both of us working together, and that's very important. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So
move on. You know this guy. This is me.
This is me without a picture. So some of you don't know me. I'm Raul, 36 years old. I'm from Timișoara. That's important. I started with kind of Haufe there. Moved to Freiburg about 5 years ago. Was the back office architect. Some of you know me because of that. And then went back as a director of engineering, right? And it's the ones who know me know that I'm a geek. I like to go to hackathons. I have a certain way. I love the technology, and me and Holger also understand each other quite well. So it's all good things, right? That's me. You're gonna get to know me a hell of a lot better. What can I say? For the good and the bad. Holger put up this slide, and it's part of the technology strategy, and it's crucial because it doesn't talk about that if we want to transform ourselves, it's not just a question of learning new things, it's not just a question of the technology. If new technology only makes sense if you use it in a different way, right? If it disrupts you in that way. And if you just look at it from a technology strategy point of view, right? Just go to microservices and you don't let affect you. You don't let that change the way you build things. It doesn't change the way that you organize things. It's not gonna, you're gonna end up doing the same thing just in a different language as we heard earlier, which is not what we want. If you want a 10x factor, you want a 5x factor, you need to change or you need to transform fundamentally. We're good with that? I still have the, you know, it's an old habit. I still need Holger to kind of say if I can move forward or not.
Well, this was supposed to be interactive, right?
Yes, absolutely. So I say we're not going to pass the first 3 slides, right? But
I think we made that bet. This slide is truly crucial because I think if you want to have a slide which kind of sums up what I tried to do for the last 3 years, I think it's that slide. When I came in here, you know, I had no idea, right? I knew I loved technology, right? And I wanted to use technology to build good products. But once I was here, I realized, even as CTO, that wasn't enough, right? It doesn't matter what kind of technology I roll into this place, unless the way we use technology, unless the way we play with technology and adapt our ways, you will use JavaScript exactly the same way as you use C++. You will use Scala exactly the same way as you use Java, and you will not reap any of the benefits. So this is when we started to come up with what are the other factors we need to influence in order to affect change. And very quickly we came up with structure. And structure, there was an interesting talk, was last week in Zurich, where Kolbusa, who helps the Haufe on the strategy process, he says structure ultimately is compensating for lack of maturity. The more structure you have, the less mature you are. So we need to change structure and the culture in order to take benefit of the technology. And this is why I kind of started to expand my brief and started to get tangled up with, you know, how we are doing things, how we are organized. And ultimately, Tech Days, as we have done for the last 3 years, is part of this culture shaping exercise, which is why we brought this in here, to create a different identity, to create a different way on us defining ourselves as technologists. So, and I think it resonated enough that he now takes this chart too in his slide deck. So, and it's part of the continuity we hope to have when we transition from me to Raul going forward. It's the 3rd slide, I think.
Yes. So I lost that. So when we started, or when I went to Timișoara, to call it like that, right? We said, okay, what's the vision? So we had this epic meeting with Marius, me, you, and Bernd, and we said, let's define the vision of Timișoara. And we had like a slide and a chart, and we did a few things. And I still have the carve-out that we want to be a center of excellence. So that's not a good name for it, but it's something that we want to have. Then we said we want to be an engineering side. Okay, that's also better probably. Then we figured out what we don't want to be. We don't want to do body leasing. We don't want to be a cost center. We don't want to be seen as things happen in Timișoara because we're cheaper. And we say we prioritize attitude over skills, right? So out of this, we were like, okay, great. And then Bernd and Holger kind of went away, and Marius and I stayed and said, excellent. So we know now a few things we don't want to be. Then what do we want to be? What does that mean, actually? And we came up with 2 statements, right? We want to have an organization that is able to create things in days and weeks rather than months and years as a value back to Haufe. And we came with this statement, which actually I stole of a Twitter post, which is what's the difference between developers and engineers? What is an engineering center? And You know, it's like good developers write great code, good engineers solve great problems. So we would like to have people that are able to not focus on the code that they write or something, I built it because it was specified like that, right? But go beyond that, right? What are the challenges? Because in the end, it's not going to be enough, and it is, and as we see the industry moving, it's not going to be enough to just say, hey, somebody taught this for me. I'm just going to translate that idea into computer code, right? Because there is almost no value in translating an idea into computer code, because that's easy now. The whole point is to create these new ideas, to take a challenge and to build something out of it, something that possibly no one else in the industry has thought of. And that's not something you can outsource from what you're doing. It's impossible. Right, so those were the kind of the two things that we said we will be successful if we are able to do these two transformations. It's weird because I have it here, but I also have it there, so I'm kind of juggling. Anything else you would like to add? No, good. So then we're going to walk through these three things. And that's hopefully going to be the next part of the presentation where we say, what did we change? And why is that feeding into this overall goal? And we're going to start with technology. So, wow, that's your slide, Holger.
That was my slide, right?
Yeah, yeah. So,
well, I don't think it needs to be explained anymore, right? Any organization I went into has a resistance to change, right? And we have, I'm a big fan of Wardley maps with the pioneers, the settlers and the town planners and how they do. And most organizations are built around managing risk, and change is risk, right? So there is an inherent impetus in every organization to manage risk and limit change. And that's okay. That's how you mentioned it as Taylor's principles. You want to have your software production predictable, so you want to eliminate risk to software production, so you want to reduce or eliminate change. And this is how we've grown up, right? This is how we have done software for the last, at least I know a few who have been in the industry for 25 years or more. Some of you have been much less, but that's essentially where we came from, right? And it's nothing to be ashamed of, right? There are few people who embrace change, right? Nevertheless, change we must, right? And sometimes I felt like I was coming with my wheel, right? And the first thing everyone put up was a sign, well, no wheels needed here. We are doing fine without it, thank you. We don't have, I mean, Uwe did a great job kind of talking about how technology changes, right? The reason why some companies, there was an interesting article, the reasons why some companies exist is because they use PHP and JavaScript, not because they use Java, right? Because it has a different mindset. It allows you to do things differently and much more agile. You all know that by now, and Uwe kind of pointed that out, so I think we are good in the need for staying on top of technology changes and using it where it fits, and embracing change, continuing to embrace change. Don't be the one closing the door on the wheel while, you know, having to carry heavy loads. So
we do have a section, if we get that far, about culture, where we come back to things like this, but good. Yeah, good. Right.
By the way, I won my bet. We are already past
yes,
slide
I know. So then I said, so how do we, so the point is always, we always like to talk about these things, right? We always like to talk how great we have to learn new things, we have to invest in new things, and what's the hardest part is to actually do it, right? The hardest part is to take time for this, is to make time out of your business schedule or out of your personal schedule and learn new things. And the role of management and the role of leadership, if you want, in that sense, is to enable that. And one thing, and I'm going to go through this thing, so some of my colleagues already presented some of that stuff. What did we do? Said, if technology is important for us, how do we operationalize that? How do we make that matter? And we said, you know, normally what we do, or what is being fostered, is that you are getting better on the things that you do every day. So you are developing in Java, you're going to learn more Java, right? You're going to go to a Java conference, you're going to be Java, Java, Java. And especially if you have a team and everybody does the same thing, you're going to end up with like an echo. Everybody knows the same frameworks, everybody knows the same technology, everybody knows the same things, everybody comes up with the same, with the same ideas. So how do we change that? And we have this thing which is called a disruptive learning path. So we take time and we allow our engineers to learn something completely different than what they are doing. So if you do Java, you're going to get sent, or you're going to get a target, or you're going to do something in another area. The idea is, how are others solving similar things in a different way? Why is there a JavaScript out there? Why is there a Node.js? Why is now Golang a thing? Obviously, the first instinct that we have is that the thing that our primary language is a solution for all the problems in the world. And potentially it's true, but nevertheless, it seems like in our industry there are other answers as well. So how do we get into that? How do we understand why those exist? So what we try to do is having this disruptive learning path. You want to say something?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think it's not about the language, and this is maybe just one clarification. It's about training the muscle to look for different answers, right? It's about challenging yourself to learn something new, whereas your instinct is to stick with what you know, right? Is to train this muscle to learn something new. And this is what I thought was so brilliant about this disruptive learning. Go to a conference you usually don't attend. Learn a language you would usually not learn. And even I took some inspiration from that, because every one of us falls into this kind of rut where we just keep doing the same things over and over again to get better at it. But actually, I think we're getting better if we are willing to step outside of our comfort bubble and learn something new. And it's a muscle. It's something we need to train. And this is something Raul instituted as an organizational feature to train that collective muscle. I think that's important to understand, right? We don't care if it's Go or JavaScript. Well, I do care, but on a different level. It's about you being encouraged to disrupt yourself, because ultimately it will make you a better developer. It will make you it will create more value for the company in the long run if you're able to disrupt yourself.
Yes. So the other thing is that we also offered, so what we try to offer to our engineers is the support to do that. And honestly, in the first phase, I said, look, if it's important, if I believe being an engineering center is important for Haufe, or it's important for me, I have to show that. And the first thing I tried to do, and it was badly managed, is I tried to be the mentor for 80 people, or at least 50 people out of that, which didn't work. It didn't scale, right? And it was, in a way, good, because the people that kind of understood that that's important kind of came to me and ran around me and so on and so forth. But the vast majority of our colleagues didn't do that. So I set a challenge, and then I didn't have neither the time nor I didn't live it enough. So in the second phase, we try to kind of scale that, and we kind of have a mentorship, and we're learning from each other as well. If there is somebody who has a skill, or if there's somebody who can teach someone, or in some cases, even if you don't know that, the fact that you are set in the position that you have to help someone else get into that field makes it so that you have to learn it by yourself, and to a different degree, so that you can teach others. So for some of us who need a little bit of a push to learn something new, that's also a very good thing, right? So it's not always I need to be an expert or something, but you are kind of, in a way, it's a sparring partner. Through you could learn various other things, and I'm gonna get to that. So the other challenge that I set is that honestly, it's not enough to just go to conferences. For me, it's not a statement of excellence. It's a statement of, I'm curious. It's a statement of curiosity. It's not a statement of excellence. So if we really want to be excellent, and if you really want, you have to challenge yourself to present as well, right? I have a stutter. I hate presenting, right? Honestly, I'm scared of all of you right now. But that's my, right? I'm scared that I will not be able to be coherent enough to tell you what I do believe in. But nevertheless, we have to challenge ourselves constantly. And we have to do that. And if we want to be, and it's not going to be 100 people or 1,000 people that's going to all go to conferences all over the world. But if you want to get there, right, and not just here, you have to challenge yourselves to do that. And it's not enough to just go there. You have to add something back. And it's not just with that, right? Some things that happen in Freiburg as well, right? We have to not only use open source, we have to contribute back. There's a different level. You're operating on a different level if you are able to contribute back, if you have your own open source, if you're putting your code out there and you're not afraid of criticism. Hackathons, open source, I mentioned. Open source, we do less in Timișoara. I'm hoping that will happen more. Hackathons was also a few interesting things, right? And that's another thing of engineering excellence or disrupting yourself. Going to a hackathon with 500 other engineers and saying, I will build something great, or in Freiburg or in Timișoara, that puts you in the position where you are learning a lot of things. You are also challenging yourself, not for you personally, but also inside your small team, that you're going to build something. Because again, it's not about learning a technology. It's not about learning a language or doing IoT now. It's about doing something with it. And hackathons foster that. If you want to be successful at it, at the end of the day, you're not just going to come out of that, for 2 days, I learned JavaScript. Give me a prize. No, that's not going to work. You have to build something with that makes sense. And it makes sense in your group of peers. Now, honestly, we did have some luck with one of it that sparkled that when we won, and that kind of made it all, oh, we're so good and so on. It was most of it luck, but that sparkled this kind of fuel that, look, we can actually do it. And and I see more and more engineers from Timișoara going everywhere and presenting things and going to hackathons and so on and so forth. This is now more and more of a culture. When we started, I attended the first one because there were just 2 people going there. And I thought that's pitiful from a company of 80 people. Nowadays, the last one, there were 15. I don't need to say more.
There are 2 stories which I think will always, there's one story, one fact about hackathons. When we had the first hackathon in Timișoara 2 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what he's trying
Raul
to say.
essentially forbade me to come if I don't code. I said, what do you mean? I pay for this stuff. What do you mean I can't come? He says, Holger, I think it will be different if you come and you join a team. I don't care which one, I don't care what you do, but I ask you to do what you're preaching, get there and do something. And I did, I even coded a little bit, tiny bit. I essentially found the SaaS service which would turn our CSV file into an API. But it was a different experience. I was part of it, right? And I can only encourage every one of you to take that time, join up. I know this is kind of weird, joining up with 3 people you probably kind of never have seen, 3 or 4 people, but it's fun. And it is different than just standing there and watching them do it. The difference is to do it yourself. And, but we still have a wide, there's still, you talked about 15, right? We had the hackathon in fall, if you remember, in Freiburg. There were 15 people from Timișoara.
Yep.
And I think how many from Freiburg? 4? A few more after we kind of went into the organization and asked to come. And I understand, it's a weekend, we all have families. We would like to be with families. But I think just the sheer numbers game, right? 15 people were willing to travel from Timișoara to Freiburg to be part of this hackathon. And let's say 4 or 5 people from Freiburg willing to come in here and doing this hackathon with them. There was Barcelona, there was also Haufe-Lexware. I think shows that there's still quite a potential out of those 500 developers we have on this site. 500 developers. 4 came, or 5 came. And I think if we fail to activate that, if we fail to activate why you became a developer engineer in the first place, this company will ultimately not reach where it should be and where we need it to be for the next couple of years. Because what we're having right now, these are the boom years. What's coming ahead is probably not going to be like that. So we need to be shaping up, we need to be prepared for the years to come so this company can sustain and can be successful in the future. And I think 5 out of 500, it's a little bit too small for comfort. For me personally, and I think it should be for you too.
Yes. The last thing that I do want to say is that there's this part with Tuesday Lab, what we're doing, and actually I started this. I'm hoping I will have someone else that I can give it to. So we said, okay, it's all nice and good to talk about technology, but in this transformation that we're going to be doing, and we're going to talk about that a little bit, is we also not just want to transform developers in better developers, but we have, QA people, ops people. We want to become this T-shaped, and most of us are there. And we need to also brush up on certain things we might have learned in university, or about especially this transition between a QA or automation tester and going the next step, and I have a functionality to build. That's a big step because you haven't been doing that, right? So how do you do that? So we started, so I actually started a program called Tuesday Labs, and Tuesday after hours, we start building up, right? For some developers, it's just a refresher. Start with the basics. What is inheritance? What do we do that? Object orientation, patterns. We do it in a fun way. We have beers, we have snacks, we have some PowerPoint slides, but we are actually coding there. Everybody can leave whatever they want. It normally takes about 2 hours. And it starts, and I had about 25 to 30 people showing up whenever I did it. I didn't do it very often. That's the other part of it, and maybe it needs to pick up. But that was important, and it was important as a statement. It was important, I think, for me that I do it, that, again, if this is a transformation that it's pushed by me, and this is also different because, in a way, I think for the people in Timișoara, it came that I want it to happen, right? And I think we always see these managers that say, we need to be there, right? And they're like showing that you have to be there, right? And then they stay over here, so everyone else needs to be over there. And that's not okay, right? I think if it's important, you have to be part of it. And it's damn hard. Honestly, I had I didn't have almost any personal life, right? Because preparing a lab like this meant a couple of days that I have to brush up on all of those things because I didn't remember them. But it was important for me, I think, in the beginning, that I'm part of that. And I do it, and I show that even if it hurts, I still do it, right? Truth be told, everything here can be done way better. And I'm hoping that Raul, that's the new director of engineering in Timișoara, he will... Yeah, so... Second day. So he will continue some of it, and I'm really hoping that you are going to change some of it as well, right? Yeah, just an example, Rolf, because I think in the past we were like, oh, Holger says Docker, we all do Docker. And that was something that we tried not to do, right? So these are the examples when we talk about these personal targets and what do we incentivize people to learn. And we're not talking about you read something off the internet and then you just make a presentation out of it. You have to build something, right? And we have, obviously, not everybody is the same. So some people will put their own personal time. Some say they will not have time, and so on and so forth. So there's degrees of involvement, but nevertheless, we do have to challenge ourselves to the degrees that we can. So these are just an example of what I remember of all the challenges we gave. And yeah, there are way more. But the idea is that you don't just learn one thing, this disrupting learn. And I had this very complicated algorithm how inside a team, everybody should learn about different things so that not everyone learns the same thing, because then you have again this echo and the mentor should come. Anyway, very complicated, but probably unnecessarily complicated. But the idea is to create this kind of divergence. of points of view. Or at least that was my idea. Structure. So this is from you, Holger, actually, that you stole that from somewhere. Right, so I will say it. So the role of structure is to make the right things easy and the wrong things hard, right? To incentivize in the right way. So it could be we need more of it or less of it, but nevertheless, it should push you in the right way. So the way that we were set up was very traditionally, right? Dev, test, and ops. So I was sitting with Marius. Marius is the director of operations in Timișoara. For those of you who don't know, we manage the site as a team. And this was also very important, right? And we were sitting and said, look, if we want to have T-shaped people, we can't let them have this kind of verticals because we're not promoting the right kind of mindset. Sure, we can preach that, we can do various things, but the structure has to follow that. Now, what you also need to know, and you probably know, the structure in bigger companies are also the thing that it's hard to change, right? Because in a way, it becomes where you know, this kind of, the dreams become reality, right? When the moment you change the culture, it's a fact. So we said, look, we're just going to have a single role, right? We're just going to have one role, which is called a software engineer. And more than that, if you want to advance in your career, you have to prove, and you have to do, actually, you have to walk the walk. So if you want to become a senior, and you are right now a QA engineer, you have to show that inside a project you are doing development, or ops, or something like that, or DevOps, or continuous delivery, building a framework, something else. Now, when we presented this, I think, and some of my colleagues here, everybody skipped through it, I think. We had a presentation, how we're all going to be software engineers now, and it's not going to be dev, test, and ops. There was a little bit of weirdness in that. Okay, what are these guys trying to do? But nevertheless, it's yeah, sure. When I think it became a reality is the moment then we did the first PDs. When we said because we said, look, if you're a senior now, you're going to be a senior engineer. We're not going to re-put you on this. That's just not fair. Nevertheless, going forward, we have new rules, right? You want to advance, you play by the new rules. So I think the first PDs, and this is with the team leads, they're there in the back, right? We had a tough problem to solve because some of our engineers feel cheated out of their careers because a year ago it was enough if you just were better at what you were currently doing, and now it's not anymore. So that was a hard thing to take in because, and you know that the engineering market or the developer market and so on, it's very, you know, there's a lot of pressure on talent. So if somebody gets unhappy, in Timișoara especially, but I'm sure in other locations, they just find another job, right? It's like that, right? Our guys probably get like a call per week, right? So now what do? Do you compromise on your values and on the things that you believe in? I said, sure, let's do it like that because we want to have happy engineers, or you stand your ground. And 20 people leaving Haufe-Timișoara would not have been great, right? So there was a hard problem to tackle. But I'm very happy that Marius and I stand our ground, and we said, no, you're going to go forward, we're going to take that risk, and we're going to we're going to make you understand why is that important. It's important for Haufe, but it's more important for you as an engineer to develop, right? It's not supposed to be seen as a bridge or as a blocker. It's supposed to be as an enabler. And then, you know, to some of them I was their mentor, and I tried to kind of change their mind, and I said, look, why don't you learn that? Why don't you do something in JavaScript? Why don't you pick up, let's say, a challenge that you have in your project and you try to do that? It's not maybe enough to just put bugs, but also solve them, right? Why can't you do that? If you have something on your mind, come talk to me. I'm going to help you. And I'm very happy to see, well, none of them left. That's one outcome. Second of all, I see more and more of them, and I have two big examples of people who now come to me and show me their Node.js app deployed in Docker containers on AWS. And 6 months ago, they thought they could only do Selenium tests. And that's a great achievement for them, right? I mean, it's a great achievement for them. And now they understand. And I think if we manage to change 1, 2, 3 people, then everybody will see that. And they will understand as well. But sticking to your guns is very hard. And you have to really believe. It's the moment when these values meet reality, right? Because you might say we all want to be engineers, but if we don't do it when it's hard, it doesn't matter. The other thing is that we had to change the way we did PDs, right? And that was mainly Marius with the team leads doing that. So we said, look, this ranking and so on, it's not going to work because we are changing now everything. We want to evaluate people based on how much they are able to disrupt themselves. And how do we do that? You cannot have like this I don't know what they're called, something, and you match that. So we did that, and I'm not gonna go very much into it, but we did that as well so that, again, structure follows the things you want to promote. If you want people to kind of, if you want to foster collaboration, if you want to foster this kind of a disruptive thing, then you have to put in you have to have the measures to push for that. Wow, culture. So yeah, you're not saying anything. You give me.
You're on a roll.
Yeah. Finally. So I was thinking about culture and why is culture important, and I came up with this. Right, culture is the values that you have, is the attitude, but it's an outcome as well. Right, so somehow culture influences everything else, but it's also an output of everything else that you're doing. Right, so it's this kind of is the thing that is around everything. Right, that makes you, fight or flight. That's going to be in the culture. It's the thing that will make you jump when you don't, I lost the metaphor, but will make you jump knowing that somebody's either going to be there to catch you or not. Right? And especially with that jumping and knowing there's someone there, I think it's this alignment between Marius and I that we had in the beginning that, he was as responsible for my madness as I was, right? And the other way around. And that's also very hard to do. We always said, the fact that I don't need to be in a room when Marius is there as well and he can take a decision, and I know even if it's not the decision I would have taken it's going to lead us to the same result. That's, for me, is the definition of trust. Right, if we believe that trust is about knowing that someone else will do exactly what you would be doing, that's not trust. The other thing, and it's at the same level, right, Holger and Bernd offered us the runway to do that, right? We were out there, and in a way it helped. We were out there in Eastern Europe, right? Isolated a little bit, in a bubble. We did a lot of things, we did a lot of these changes, and I think some of our managers here were surprised to hear about that a year later. And also you, I think, were surprised to some of the things, but you believed, hopefully, that all of that gets us to where we need to be, without you needing to control that operationally. I don't know.
Well, there's those in the CTO office know that there's something called mission command, Auftragstaktik. Anyone here has heard about that? I'm looking at my
those in CTO office,
colleagues.
No. That's feedback as well, Holger.
Yes. I think they stopped reading my emails after a while. Mission command is actually a very interesting leadership principle, and it evolves around that you don't tell people, you tell people what is their mission, what is their Auftrag, right? And you let them know why this is important and what you hope to achieve. But how they get there is completely up to them. It was, for those of you who haven't, there's a book called Lean Enterprise where this is kind of, or you can just Google it. It was the response of the Prussian army after the defeat of Napoleon. Just a little sidetrack, so I say something too here.
Yeah, absolutely.
What Napoleon did back when he was winning was he introduced a tactic called maneuver tactic, right? Previously, you had like very fixed tactics that people were executing a plan on the battlefield, and that either worked or didn't. What Napoleon did was he usually was kind of trying to get an overview over the battlefield, and he was able to maneuver his army to take local advantages, right? Weaknesses he spotted, other movements. So he was able to move his army like a chess piece. And that was called maneuver tactic. And he slaughtered the Prussians and actually a whole bunch of other ones. Now, the Prussians being Prussians, they kind of didn't take that lying down. And so Clausewitz got the task to find a tactic which essentially enables the Prussian army to win against the French army. And Clausewitz came up with that mission tactic where essentially he outguns Napoleon by empowering every single leader on the battlefield to make their own decisions. So it wasn't anymore that one genius could contain the entire chaos of the battlefield, but it was one genius, Napoleon, against thousands of mildly intelligent Germans moving on the battlefield trying to achieve their missions. And this is ultimately how Napoleon lost, because he couldn't understand and he couldn't manage the chaos on the battlefield anymore, because every move he made was immediately countered not by someone equal of him on the battlefield, but by 10 or 15 commanders on the battlefield who immediately took advantage of some opening. So the battlefield became too chaotic for him in order to lead his troops. And this is ultimately what led to his downfall. Out of that came the idea of Auftragstaktik, mission command, which by now is one of is actually the doctrine in the Western military. And it is actually almost every startup I know and I have been part of uses some form of this leadership principle, where you don't tell people what they should be doing. You tell them where you need them to be and why that matters. And let them figure out everything along the path, and you accept that A, they sometimes take a path you wouldn't have taken, but for as long as it contributes to the overall mission, it's fine. They go left, they go around, they go under, they go on top. You don't care for as long as they are where they need to be in terms of succeeding in the mission. And that requires a lot of trust. It requires the opposite of micromanaging. It means letting go, but keep constantly explaining why we need Timisoara to be different. And I think it worked wonderfully, you know.
We are very different.
But this is kind of that was the thinking behind why we let go, both Bernd and I, why we let go, and we essentially created that bubble for him, because we ultimately believed that Raul and Marius knew what we needed Timisoara to be. And however they needed to decide this, they shouldn't come to us and ask for permission. They should inform us, but then just do it. And rather apologize than asking for permission. If they had to ask for permission, nothing of this would have happened. Over to you.
Yes, almost true. The other kind of culture is also we had to rethink the way that we see Timisoara as successful, or these are just a few things that came to my mind. And I think one of the big change, and also the way that we want to be seen in the market there, is we don't want to we want to focus on outcomes and not on numbers. Normally, especially if you're in the outsourcing business, right? You're successful if you have more people, because that brings in more revenue. And in a way, especially in Eastern Europe, we have this culture of, oh, it's a successful company if that grows. But that's not true for us. For us, success means having successful projects and products. So we changed that way of thinking about our success, and we said, look, we would be happy if we have even less projects, but those projects are successful. Our teams are successful. So I'm bringing it up because in a lot of cases we always see this success as a quantitative thing, right? We say, oh, we're growing, therefore we are successful. It's not about that. It's about making, as Haufe Group, our customers happy. right? We are not an outsourcing business. So therefore, those are not, if we're growing, it's a result of our success, not the aim of it. And that also cleared a bit of the friction if, oh, are you guys in Timișoara only focus on, being better and grabbing things from us? No, we're not. We're not about that. We're about adding value to Haufe overall, right? Creating great products and having the engineers that support that.
But I think that line actually means a lot more in practice. 3 years ago, I would dare if Timișoara would have said no, right? Some project manager comes and says, I need a dev in some obscure technology with 20 years experience and something like this. And the mindset was that Timișoara would try to make it work. If it's good or bad, that wasn't part of the culture. And I think what we changed was that Raul could say no. He said no to people coming and saying, I need one person or two people, because it didn't make sense, right? It was either a technology which has no bearing on the future, or the size of the team or was too little in order to make a successful contribution. And I think the power to say no is even more important than the power to say yes. Everyone can say yes. But to say no really takes stamina, and it takes an attitude and a culture to do that.
Yes, I think the other takeaway for me personally, if it's important for us, you have to be there. You have to be on the battlefield if you want. I'm trying to connect to Holger on this war thing. So you have to be there on the battlefield. You have to feel that pain, right? Because otherwise you're not genuine in doing it. So we had a lot of these new initiatives. I was there as well. That has a drawback, right? And I'm realizing that as well, that I never truly scaled. I did it by myself together with a lot of other people, or the other way around, right? I always had to be there one way or another. And that's not a success. That's not a recipe for kind of sustainably doing this in the future. But we were going through a hard disruption phase. And I think that's kind of the way that I believed that I would show that it's important for me. Yeah, I think that's the other thing. I think a lot of our conversations in the past were like around this, right? No front end or back end, right? Why can we have back end developers and front end? We are actually not having dev, test, and ops anymore, right? We have projects when our engineers take a user story and go live with it, right? Going through all the steps needed in order to go live with that. And these are not just toys. These are either customer-facing critical functionality or a service that most of the other products are using. And on one hand, it's the skills. On the other hand, is having the attitude that in not being overwhelmed by that fact. Yes, this one is also kind of related to the other one, right? You build it, you own it. This is fun because this is not how we used to do. This is not how we used to do our SaaS products, at least. We used to be building them, and someone else used to run them for us. And I think that change of mindset is really important. And it comes with a lot of fear. Fear that all of a sudden I will be waken up at 3 a.m. and I don't want to do that, right? And it seems like, again, it's an impossible task, or it's an inconvenient thing to do, to run ops or to build those things. But that also empowers us immensely, because if you give to a team that challenge, you also have to empower that team to do whatever they believe makes sense in order not to be woken up at 3 a.m. And all of a sudden, you're not anymore pushing for continuous delivery, cloud, resiliency, and all of those things, but everyone else in the team pushes for that as well, because it's their skin in the game. That makes things way easier. But it is this kind of, is the challenge and the enablement that have to work hand in hand. And if, for example, on the business side that can't happen, it never can happen, right? Then I think it's our role as leaders to clear that path. Because otherwise, we're just going to fail. I think this is the last slide. Yes, sort of. So this was supposed to be a longer talk about how do all of these projects in the end, because we can talk about how we did differently, but it becomes real the moment that you see it in projects. You see people behave in a different way. And there's way more than just this, and actually I had more, but then Holger gave me other slides and now they're less, right? There's way more than just this. And there's not only projects in Timișoara, there's IRESC, there's projects where we collab. Most of these projects are collaborations with Freiburg and Timișoara. But what we see is we see our engineers behaving in a different way. And that's important. Right, so we're not going to go through all of them.
But maybe you can repeat what you told me, kind of like as a wrap-up. What are you proud of when you leave Timișoara in 2 months?
I was thinking of having another ending than that, because I've said that 2 times already. Right? I will say that, what Holger asks me to say, and then I wanted to give the other ending.
Okay, so this is ending number 1.
Yes, ending number 1 is that I'm extremely happy and I'm extremely proud to see an ever-increasing number of people in Timișoara that are prepared for the unknown. And this is what we need, right? Nothing else, everything that we did for that. Because the challenges that we're going to face in the future are the unknown. That's ending number 1.
But let that sink in for a second, right? I mean, this is huge. Having prepared or having more people being willing to kind of step into the unknown without knowing where they end up, that's huge.
And Jan was giving this example, right? That you know, you asked me, hey, we have this hackathon about data science, right? And we would like to have 2 developers helping our data science team do something, right? That was literally how it was, right? We have to build something in it. And I made a call to, not to everyone, but to kind of like 10 or 15 people. And I said, look, I believe you guys can do this. And some of them asked me, you know, what's that about? I don't know. I mean, that's something that, you know, it's a hackathon about doing data science, and we have to deliver something in 2 days. You know, figure it out. And I had more people applying than the 2 people, so I have to say to some of them, okay, you know, we already have the 2, you know, the first ones that kind of said they're going to go. So that kind of an attitude, right? When you're not, we didn't know what that was, right? And it was not maybe a perfect outcome, but it was a good outcome. There was actual value being produced, and that kind of an attitude is really the thing that we need more and more, right? I'm not saying we need 1,000 people like that. I'm not saying that this is like the benchmark, and as I came into Timișoara, I believed I can just do like this and everybody will be here. It's not true. Everybody needs to find its own pace of this kind of a disruption, evolution, call it as you want. We all need to understand that there are intrinsic and extrinsic factors that allow us to do more or allow us to do less, and that's fine. The only thing what we cannot afford to do is stand still or do too little, right? There is this too little that we just, you know, I read 2 articles this year, I'm fine. That's not good enough. But nevertheless, it's also not good to say, unless you are here, you're not good. That's not true. That's a lesson I had to learn. Everybody has its own pace, but make sure you have a pace. Ending number 2? Yeah. So, as I said that a couple of times, I said I'm not going to do this anymore. But I I remember a story that a friend of mine told me, and not many of you, or many of you went to Timișoara. We have a river that flows through the middle of the city. It's called Bega. It's a little bit deeper than the Dreizam, but in theory you can sail it. So it's a channel, and then there was like from the old communism era, there was like a one beached boat that used to carry tourists. That was still maintained by 2 guys. And one of those drunk guys was calling the other one captain. Captain this, captain that, you have to talk to the captain, right? And he reflected that to me, and he said, look, what kind of a captain do you want to be? Do you want to be a captain of a little boat that bitched that doesn't work, but you're still a captain, or do you see yourself being the captain on the high seas? They're both called a captain, but they are a different kind of a captain. And he then stated that great captains are being forged by rough waters. And what we need to do, we need to be forged by those hard waters, because those are the kind of an engineers we need to be. So it's not going to be easy, but it's damn necessary to do that.
Wow.
That was it.
Thank you.